Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Today we've got Colin from Hero VC. Colin, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm from Canada, born and raised in Toronto, lived 10 years in Europe on and off, doing different things. But early in my career, early in my life, I knew that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I knew I was going to start companies and build things and make things. And so, I mean, I guess my first company wasn't until later, but I ended up getting jobs in companies in order to learn about the different aspects of companies so that when I started my own companies, I would have a little more experience and build a bunch and then started angel investing and then started venture capital work and but even though I've kind of moved up the food chain a little bit, I still entirely focus on startups. I mean, we do early stage investing, and so I'm all about helping the idea to commercialization process. That's what I find the most exciting. I find after that it's kind of becomes more of an engine and other people are better at that than I am.
Awesome, awesome. And I'm to understand that you've got your own angel fund and your own VC fund, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, cool. That's what is it? Hero VC and then Risk
Risk
Capital?
capital, yeah. Hero Ventures and risk capital.
Cool. So what was it that made you want to get started in this whole world of investing and, VC and all this great stuff?
I mean, it was kind of like, the guy Joseph Campbell, he talks about the calling. Like you sort of, if you listen to kind of, you know, what's going on around you and you're open-minded, then and you are receptive to what's kind of what your body is telling you to do. I mean, that's my answer. That's my odd answer to how I got into it. I mean, I was just always someone that wanted to create businesses and I even as young as 16, I remember I moved to a new country and wanted to order a pizza and you couldn't order a pizza in London, England in the 80s. And I was thinking, well, how am I going to eat? I mean, I'm on my own, I'm a kid, and I didn't know much about cooking or anything. So I thought, okay, so why don't while I'm at school, why don't I put together a business plan for starting a pizza company? And when I graduate high school, why don't I, instead of go to university, why don't I start a pizza company in London? And I started working on that project, and it was a few year project. I ended up getting a job in Toronto for a pizza company and learned about that, and got my dad's friends to help me with business plan and backing. And so I put it all together and then ended up at a point in my life where I could either choose university or going back to England and starting the pizza company. And I ended up choosing university because timing wise, you have age wise, you have one chance, well, more one chance to go to university with all your peers. I can always come back and start another company or whatever later. So that I chose that over that. But it was the beginning of the process of starting companies, which I started doing many times after that.
Yeah, hey, I totally get that. Did you ever go back to the pizza thing, or did you just move on to totally different stuff right after that?
Yeah, I kind of never got back to it. Like after I graduated university, I was kind of in a tech career and I kind of liked the tech career. And so, and I had, and I, technology was changing very quickly and I was really into it. And so I kind of found new interests, but it was always in the back burner and it still is kind of like sorry, eh, like still is my favorite food.
Hey, I get that. I think I've made like three pizzas in the last week.
Nice. Yeah, I love it.
Actually, that was one of my first jobs too, was pizza delivery guy. I used to work for Papa John's.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, mine too. I mean, I ended up working early on for this pizza franchise in Canada.
Really cool. Which one?
It's called Pizza Pizza.
I was at first I thought it was like, is that a different version of Little Caesars? Or is
No,
that
it was a Toronto-based company. They were super clever. What they did is they got out with a couple of stores and they created a phone number, and that was their entire advertising campaign. So anybody in Toronto that wanted to order a pizza, everyone knew the phone number in their head, or they could open the yellow pages and try to remember the number of the company they would order from normally, or they would just pick up the phone and start dialing, and it just saved people. I mean, it literally saved people like 30 seconds, but it was a huge win, and they ended up with like 150 stores all across Toronto, and they started expanding to like Ottawa, Montreal, and stuff like that. But they're really Toronto focused, and they did an amazing job.
oh wow. That is a lot of stores. just
Yeah,
one.
in one city. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned along the way, and what are some of your favorite projects that you have worked on? Or I guess that should be two separate questions, really, but like, what is one
Yeah.
of your favorite projects that you've worked on so far?
Favorite project so far?
Yeah.
Um, there's I think some of my wins that I've enjoyed have been favorite projects. Um, it's always exciting when something that you kind of back starts to do well, and you kind of feel like you've sort of, it's an early stage is a numbers game. 9 times out of 10 you fail, right? Somewhat. So the ones that do well are always super exciting, the one of them I really liked was um, lasering cancer tumors. So this guy developed a way of lasering cancer tumors through a fiber optic, and it was more like cooking. And it's called ablating. You ablate the tumor. You cook it. And the clever part of the whole thing was he invented this way of getting to a tumor and cooking it without any metal. So and as a result, he could do it inside an MRI machine. So most times the alternative was like the 2 week operation where the surgeon goes in, you take, a skull, whatever, if it's a head to brain tumor, and it's just a very invasive way of getting at that tumor. This way, you don't even need a surgeon anymore because there's usually the surgeon does the biopsy. So the surgeon has already gone in through a little canal to get to do the biopsy. And then once they've figured it all out and you have the whole image on an MRI machine, you can send in this little fiber optic, no metal involved, and then you just sort of burn the tumor, and then all of a sudden the tumor's gone. So much less invasive. Do it in the afternoon. Technician does it, and so they built that company and sold it to Medtronic for, big money at some point, and I was one of the early investors in there. There was an online pharmacy company in Canada, kind of like a sort of you guys had drugs.com or something like that, but in the early days we had something similar, and they took a while, but they did really well too. It ended up selling to one of the big pharma companies. And I was the first investor in that. Um, and I was in first investor in another one called MedTech, and so there's a handful of them, and I'm really proud. I'm really proud to be like the first investor to back some of these people in the early when I was doing my angel investing, because
Yeah.
that's really fun to get to know them and guide them and help them along their way as much as you can. Like there's a lot of times you can't do very much, but something it's doing something.
Yeah, I totally get that. I'm seeing a pattern here. Does this mean that you've invested in a lot of biotech companies? Would you say like that's your focus or
No, I kind of like it. I'm an electrical engineer by university graduate thing. And I can evaluate the risk in those types of companies pretty well. And I can't really evaluate the risk in med tech so much. But when it's a kind of a med tech type of situation, which can be looked at from an engineering point of view, that's my favorite area. I'm not the greatest at it, but that's my favorite area. Like the last deal I did was AI on pathology slides. So, you know, um, AI can do much better than humans on looking at a pathology, a piece of tissue, and deciding what's on there. And so that's great tech nowadays. And but as soon as it crosses over into biotech or like drugs and something a little more, involved with chemistry or things like that, outside of my realm, I can't do it. But I like it. I mean, health is, health and tech are great combination.
absolutely? Yeah, seen some crazy stuff coming out. Have you heard of the laser spa that's been coming out lately?
With a laser spa.
It's this whole thing where you go, you have it's kind of like a tanning bed, right? So it's like flat and then it's got a dome
Yeah,
over it.
yeah,
And instead of doing like the traditional tanning bed lights where it goes like line, 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 whatever, right? It's actually a row of LEDs
yeah.
set at different frequencies.
And what do you do?
Um, I guess the idea is that it like penetrates through the skin and does something to help reduce inflammation, makes
Oh,
people
all right.
relax. I
Oh
don't know
yeah,
how much
I
to,
heard about, yeah, there's the face mask with the laser light and stuff like that. I've seen a couple of things like that. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, this is a whole body thing. So it goes
Whole
like,
body one. Yeah, that's cool.
yeah. Yeah, it's a super cool thing. I'll probably get you a picture of it later on too.
Yeah, everything to do with health like that. And yeah, there's a really popular thing in Toronto now called Othership where you go do a spa, like a sauna, and then you jump in the cold dip.
Yeah.
That's becoming very popular here.
Oh yeah, I love those. Those are kind of the Russian style sauna
Yeah, yeah,
spas. Yeah.
yeah. That's right.
I used to go to one of those I want to say like every 2, 3 weeks when I was in Ukraine.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's always a good time. I really love the fact that they have a lot of eucalyptus in there because it makes it
Yeah.
smell nice.
Yeah.
You had to back when you were there. It was just like the traditional thing to do, I guess.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know the Russians, and yeah, I've been to a couple of Russians one here too. Fun, really fun.
Oh yeah, they're great. I think they call them banyas, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
Anya, that's right.
Banyas. It's been so long, been like, oh gosh, 8 years since I was
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I was in Istanbul in my last month, and they have the hammam, which is a sort of a similar thing where you go. It's not a cold dip, but you go and it's a spa, steam room, and then you get scrubbed by a massage guy, and they wash you, and it's a Middle Eastern version of that. It's really cool.
That sounds great. I gotta try one of those.
Hammam, yeah, they probably have them. Like there's a hammam in Toronto. They're around. I mean, they're cater mostly to the local, you know, Middle Eastern Muslim communities, but it's really great.
I'm writing that down. I'm gonna look that up.
And there's also the Korean one, which is also amazing too.
Oh, the salt
Korean
rooms?
Jinjilbang.
Yeah. Are those the salt rooms?
Yeah, there's salt rooms, but there's also they do a scrub. If you get the right Jinjilbang, then they'll do the scrub, and they get like it's like a really rough scrubber that they go over your skin, and they scrape basically a layer of dead skin off.
Oof. Yeah.
It's great. It's you feel cleaner than you've ever felt. I didn't even want to have a shower the next day. I felt so clean. I thought a shower would make me dirtier.
It might have if you had hard water.
Yeah, it was just so good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what kind of stuff were you doing when you were working more with these companies that you were angel investing with? Was it more just kind of a capital role, or were you actually providing some kind of mentorship and the like to these
Yeah,
guys?
I mean that time period is probably about ooh, 15 years. Yeah, it was probably about 15 years. Um, I was transitioning from starting companies to that role. So I think the last company I started, um, we were out raising capital. So we started the company, me and another guy, and we went out to raise capital, and then we started pitching. And because we'd both started the company, we managed to raise some money, but the people who we raised money from was like, okay, you two need to run the company. Like I was sort of saying, yeah, I'm going to help raise capital, and I'm just going to take a sort of a back seat or whatever, and do other things as well. But we were so far along building the company together that the investors said, no, Colin, you got to stay and actually be full-time part of the company if we're going to give you money. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's not what I really want to do, but I will do that for this company, the last one that I started, right? So I agreed, and I think I agreed to stay there for 3 or 4 years, and we built that company together. And then after for the next fundraising, I managed to kind of say before the fundraising started, I would say I'm going to step back and play a more of a mentor role as opposed to a full-time role. And then after that company, so that was the last one. After that company, when I started companies, I would kind of go in and basically work with the founders. So I would invest in a founder and we would work together to get to the point of fundraising. So I would take on a pretty significant role in the early days of angel investing, take on a pretty significant role with the company to get it to like a fundraise. And then organize, have it already organized that I would be stepping back and then go on to the next one. So it was kind of like one by one, but then I started doing it more, and then I started giving money to other companies that I didn't need to be doing that to. So it was kind of transitioned into the angel investor role where I could, just manage all the companies at once.
Yeah. Okay. What are some of the lessons that you've learned from doing all of this?
It lessons in terms of business. I think there's there's one thing that I seem to have to that's in the startup world. I have to go back. Every founder, I mean, not everyone. Some of the founders have had experience building companies before, so they're usually not a problem to deal with. Um, the new founders are usually missing a bunch of things, like they just don't have they haven't been around, they haven't experience, and there's a whole bunch of things, and they're the same kind of things all the time. So I kind of feel like I go in and I try to explain, the importance of accounting, right? I mean, they're often the founders are science based or they're sales based or something like that, and they just underappreciate the keeping track of stuff part of running a business. And so I really have to kind of read them the riot act and make sure that they have at least some kind of bookkeeper keeping track of stuff. Um, just and it's just something that they're just not used to, and it's something they don't really want to do. And so I have to teach them that a little bit. I have to teach them how to deal with lawyers. So all of a sudden they're starting to deal with lawyers for the first time, and then the lawyers take advantage of the startups a lot. They kind of like try to cross too many T's and dot too many I's for not necessary reasons, but in the early stage. So you kind of have to teach the startup people that you don't have to let the lawyers tell you everything. You should be telling the lawyers what you need, and you should take ownership of all these things. Finance, you should take ownership of. Even though you're the CEO and you're going to hire a sales guy, you still got to take ownership of the sales and not let your hires kind of run your business. And so there's a lot of skills that I've learned over the years running businesses and investing that I have to pass on, and that's a pretty valuable lesson I usually spend regularly with these guys.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, like what else? I mean, I have a LinkedIn thing that I do with our marketing guy where he interviews me once a month and then posts all my LinkedIn content based on the interviews. And it's all about that kind of stuff. It's all about what kind of lessons did we learn this week or what are we, that kind of stuff. And so I take these lessons too, and I keep them, pass them back out to the community as best I can.
I like that. That's kind of why we do the show, you know?
Yeah, no, that's right. That's why I like it.
Yeah. Um, well, let me think here. If you had to pick one message to tell the world of startup founders and all these guys, startup founders, investors, venture capitalists, all of these guys, what lesson or what message would that be?
Okay, so I mean, startups are hard, right? I mean, startups are very, you know, you know, I think 1 in 100 do well. So they are, so so if you're thinking about the numbers, anybody in their right mind, anybody who sort of thinks about starting a company from a, nuts and bolts mathematical perspective should never do it because it just doesn't make sense. The risk profile is too high. I even named my company Hero Ventures because the hero in the hero myth is the person that slays the dragon, or has to slay the dragon, but usually gets killed. I mean, in the movies they don't get killed, and that's why people do startups is because you kind of you got the chance to become a hero and you got to take it, and even if you don't succeed doesn't mean it's a bad thing. But I mean, from a math point of view, it's not a smart thing to do a startup. But the point of the story, and getting back to Joseph Campbell, is in life in general, like forget about startups, in life in general, you got to be listening to your passions, right? You got to be, you want to spend your life doing things that you love, regardless of failure, like in my opinion. Um, as opposed to, a lot of my friends who have been grinding away, who got sort of locked into kind of like the path that the world kind of teaches us to be in, which is, get married, have kids, get a mortgage, get a house, like live in the whatever nice area, and did this kind of thing, and that's for some people, no question, but it's not for as many people as there are that do that. And I feel bad for a lot of those people who end up doing those things and not fulfilling their dreams and or at least attempting to fulfill their dreams. So the biggest lesson I've learned is yes, it's great to do it, and you've got to listen to your calling it, and you should do it, but just be prepared that it's a lot more work than you think, but it's worth it no matter what. Even if you fail like 5 times in a row, it's going to be worth it. Even, because it's the journey, right? It's not whether you succeed or not necessarily, right? It's your life is supposed to be this journey, and you got to follow the journey that you're, designed to follow.
Absolutely. 1000%.
Yeah, that's what I've learned.
Yeah, I like it. So that's about all the time we've got for the feature. Is there anything that you'd like to promote? Any books that you've been reading lately? Any lessons that you've been teaching lately that you'd like people to see and know about?
Um, No, I mean, not really. I read a great book called The Art Thief over the Christmas holidays. And it's a true story about an artist, about a guy who was kind of an artist, but he had no money, living in his mom's house in the attic or whatever. And he decided to start stealing stuff from museums and art galleries. He would never steal anything from anybody or any, personal thing. It was just kind of like, and he never sold one piece. And he spent his next 10 years stealing bits and pieces from famous art galleries all around Europe. He ended up with $1 billion worth of art in his attic. And it's the biggest art thief in the world. It's kind of not really well known. And he finally got busted, went to jail, and of course, and everything. But he loved the art. Like, it's kind of like, okay, it's illegal. So that's so that's one thing. But he did, this was his thing. Like, and it was wrought with certain things of failure that the world doesn't really like, and as a result, they throw you in jail. But I mean, he followed his path. It was such a great little story of a sad story in a way of a guy and going out every couple of weekends to, find another art gallery and try to figure out some silly way to grab something that, probably people weren't. You think he said it, people wouldn't even appreciate it. They'd be like a corner of a gallery. No one knows about it. No one cares about it. But he knew everything about it. He would have done all the research, and he just wanted to look at it every day or something like that. I mean, the way they wrote the book was charming, but I mean, it was cool. That's all I've read. That's the last I've read.
Sounds like a great book.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Cool. So if people want to get in touch with you, should they look up Hero VC or Risk Capital?
Yeah, I mean, either one. So Hero VC, there's a website for Hero VC. The Hero VC fund is not really running right now. I mean, it's got a bunch of portfolio companies in there.
Mhm.
And so I'm focused entirely on the Risk Capital Fund, which is a deep tech fund. So we didn't talk about deep tech, but deep tech is a category of venture capital, kind of like AI and kind of quantum robotics. It's a little more complicated than generalized venture capital. So, and very techy. So if anybody's interested in talking to me about investing in our next fund or startups that want to look for capital, yeah, Colin at risk.capital. And risk is RISC.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Colin, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure having you.
All right. Well, great. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.